Well, hello everyone again, and welcome to Yorkshire Gamer. And this is another one in the series of 1/700th World War II naval ship videos. And this one is going to be a little bit longer than the normal 5-10 minute format that we've done with other stuff, because I'm going to show you how to make these shell splashes. And I say that because I've only made one so far, and that's it in front of you. But I'm going to show you how I'm making these and talk a bit about shell splash size, etc., etc., and take you through the process from here to on the table. And this shell splash has been getting a lot of attention. I'm spending weeks putting together a model, carefully painting it, doing the base, weathering, getting the sea foam on, and then everyone goes, "Oh, I love the shell splash." Little bit deflating, guys, honestly, but there we go. So to shut you all up, here's the video on how I make it. One little word at the start: if you do use this process and you do use this video, please credit Yorkshire Gamer. There's a lot of stuff out there that I can quite clearly tell has been influenced by mine, and it's just nice, you know. I've spent this time to do this for free. I don't ask for any money, I don't ask for any Patreon, just a bit of credit. So if you do use it, please just mention Yorkshire Gamer. I would be really grateful. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through all the stuff that I'm going to use in this process, so you can bob down to your local DIY store and model shop to get what you need. So back in a second with that. So this is what you're going to need, and first thing we're going to need a base, and I've used 3mm MDF with the plaster just to make them a little bit stronger than the 2mm MDF. Stop any warping. You shouldn't get warping in this scale, but when we go a little bit bigger, these are 40mm in diameter, and these are for these water splashes. And this water splash is, in French money, is 50mm. Now, I encourage you, once you watch this video, to go off and have a look at how big shell splashes are. A shell splash from a large caliber gun, 15-inch shell, 14-inch shell, will be massive in this scale. I reckon 12 to 15 centimeters high. This shell that we're working on, and I'm going to show you how to make, is for a small caliber gun, for a destroyer, 5-inch, 4-5-inch gun. So have a look at that outside, because sometimes you'll put good splashes on and people go, "Oh, that's miles too big." Just like me, Deirdre Barlow voice there. And no, Mavis Riley, wasn't it, on Coronation Street? Anyway, I digress. Go and have a look, because for the bigger stuff, you're going to need to get an 80mm or potentially 100mm. I'm going to build some larger ones on the back of this, just to go through that process. So we're going to need, once we've got our bases, we're going to need to make a hole in it. So some form of pin drill or other drill will be needed, and then a craft knife is always helpful and useful. You are going to need some form of ignition, fire. So I'm just using the cooker lighter, but a cigarette lighter or anything similar will do. You are going to need some filler, and this is, I normally use polyfiller, but this just happened to be what they had in down big Tasdas. So one of them, a old knackered craft knife, just to slap that on. You are then going to need some plastic tubes or rods or columns, and you can buy those from model shops, or you can be a tight Yorkshireman and use old bits of model sprue. So take your pick, get them for now that you've already bought, or go down the shop and buy those swanky white ones that will look absolutely superb and absolutely the same as everything else. Then paints wise, we're going to use miniature paints navy blue. We are going to use model colour Vallejo dark blue. we are going to use model colour dark blue grey, and then model colour ivory, and it's just a substitute of white. I don't like using pure white. I think it looks dreadful on models. So those are the colours that I am going to use to paint. You are going to need, in addition to that, an old nail. See what we're going to use that for later on. And then you need to go and get the big guns out of the shed, because you're going to need one of these bad boys. It's a I don't know what they're called, actually. Professional cartridge gun. There you go. It says it on it. And in here, I have loaded it with an Evo Stick clear waterproof sealant. Any clear sealant will do. There's a potential to use hot glue for this, but I don't think it will work, and you'll see that why during the process. So I've picked one of these up. I mean, that's going to last me a lifetime. For doing these shell splashes. So that's everything you need. So let's get down and get busy and start building. Okay, so the first stage of the build is going to be to build sort of a lattice framework on which we're going to build the splash. So we've got our base, and the first thing I'm going to do is just use my normal pin vise drill, and somewhere near the centre, I suppose you could do this accurately if you wanted to. I'm just going to drill a hole through the centre. And yeah, I missed the middle again. And I'm going to choose some sprue that I'm going to use. And just got this old bit of sprue here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece off that is about 1/2 centimetre bigger than the size of the splash. So we said we're going to do 5 centimetres, so I'm going to go just 5.5, a little bit more maybe, and cut this off, and that's going to be the base for my lattice work. And I'm just going to trim the end off so that it is roughly. And with this, you don't need to be 100% accurate on anything at all. It just needs to be roughly. So that's going to be the central piece. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use the old craft knife just to bore this hole out gradually on both sides, like so. And I'm just going to get that to a point where the it's just wide enough to fit the sprue through. I'm just pushing. I can feel it going through. Now this needs to be as tight as it possibly can. There we go. Let's just pop through. And you could attempt to use a larger pin vise, but the sprues are not a standard width, so that's why I do it that way, widen it out to the sprue that I'm going to use. So once we've got our sprue in situ like that, you want to get it so that that extra distance that we were talking about before, the extra 1/2 centimetre or centimetre, is just protruding through what is going to be the rear of the splash. And now we're going to get a little bit fun. You're going to want a bit of base or something that isn't flammable. Just put that on the deck there, and then we're going to get the fire, and we're just going to heat this up on the bottom. You want to get it so that it's just about starting to melt. And I find spinning it around is good. Once it sets fire itself, blow it out and then push down on there. Release it as quickly as you can so it doesn't stick to this base. And effectively what we've done is we've made a nail out of it by pushing down on the melted plastic, we've been able to do that, and I'm just going to give that one more little blast, just to get it as flat as I can. There we go. I think that's pretty good. So that is going to be the framework for the shell splash. We are roughly about the same height, and we're just going to work around that. So we shall move on to the next process, which is to build up the remainder of the framework for the splash. So here we are with our bit of sprue that we cut this off, and I found that 6 is normally a really good number. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut 6 variable lengths of sprue, and just with my clippers. And what I'm going to try and do is just to get stuff that is variable sizes. So I want to go kind of up. Maximum size is going to be the sprue that we've got, and then minimum size really is up to you. Once you start doing these shell splashes, you're going to kind of get into a groove yourself and determine what you think are the best sizes for yours. So I'm just cutting these off fairly randomly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a very good number. So I am just going to do this last one about there. I found that I like to have slightly different, 2 or 3 fairly small ones, a couple of big ones, and jobs are good. And so I've got 6 ready to go and ready to build the framework for the splash. And I'm just going to put some glue. This is Naval Contact Professional, but any plastic glue will do. Just going to put that down one side of our fixed structure, and then with our flame fire, I'm just going to, this one's slightly bent already, but find if you just give it a quick blast, that will soften it off enough just for you to bend it a little bit, or however you want to do, and you'll find that very quickly it will, once it cools down, it will fix in place. So I'm just going to line that one up there, and then you can see we've got that little, oops, it's off. Don't show it off until the glue's dried. I recommend using quite a lot of glue with these. I'm going to put the next one on this side, because I think this the one we've just done is going a little bit rogue. So get another one of these, little bit of heat, give it a bend, click it into place, or glue it into place, and so on. So just go around, you'll find that, as I say, 6 is the ideal number, and that will give you a full structure. And in true Blue Peter style, here's one we've done earlier. So that's kind of the effect that we are looking for. So I shall be back in a minute with the next stage. So, having built the lattice work structure and allowed it to set to make sure we're not going to get any bits falling off while we're working on it, next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some polyfiller, or spackle, I think it's called in the United States. And then with this, normal plaster, I'm just going to form a sort of C structure on the base. Now, I'm not putting anything on here to represent like a bow wave or anything like this. So all I'm trying to do is just build up a couple of millimeters of plaster around our central structure, rough it up a bit. Remember, this is going to be the sea, and make it look like something that we can paint, and make it look like sea. And quite often, the more rugged this part is, the easier it is to get a decent look on it in terms of a sea effect. So there we go. That's kind of the first stage that I'm going to do, and I'm going to put this to one side now. I'm building 8 of these, so I'll go away and do the rest off camera, and I'm going to leave this overnight for the plaster to dry and the lattice to go at 100% solid and not moving, and then we'll come back tomorrow and have a look at the next part of the process. Okay, welcome to a new day, and this is what we had yesterday, and I've let everything dry. The plaster's gone hard, so what I need to do now is to paint this section, the tree section, as in white, and I'm just going to do that with an airbrush. And apologies to my mate Alex, I know he always says that as soon as he sees an airbrush he switches off. You can, honestly, you can do this however you want. You can paint it if you like, or use a spray can. I just happen to be sitting at a desk with an airbrush, so I'm just gonna pop on and just spray everything white, go through, give it a couple of coats, cover it all areas to make sure that I've got it nice and white, and jobs are good 'un. So nice and easy, no dramas. Paint it white with a brush, with a rattle can, with an airbrush. Just do that. And just so you can see, I'm making these in a batch, and I'm doing another 6. Each one of these, I'm going to need at least one of these for each of the ships that I've got, and I've got 8 destroyers either done or on the go, so I will have one of these markers each for the destroyers, and we'll look at how we use those in the game later on. And then I've got this ginormous thing that looks a bit like a tree from Lord of the Rings, but this is actually a large caliber, or my first sort of prototype for a large caliber gun shell, gun splash, and as you can see, it's quite considerably larger than the ones that we've done already for the smaller destroyer 4-5 inch shells, and this will be representing a sort of 15-inch shell, and this is about 13-14 centimeters high, which is about a mast and a half height on the Bismarck. And I hope this is going to work, because big caliber gun splashes are absolutely spectacular. So there we go, we've done those, and we'll move on to the next stage. And the next little thing that we need to do is to gloss varnish, and I think didn't mention gloss varnish earlier on in things that we need, but it needs to be gloss for a particular reason, but we're going to gloss varnish the plaster. Now what this does is twofold. First of all, it binds the surface of the plaster so that it makes it a little bit more durable when it comes to actually using this. I think the big difference between modelling and wargaming is that when you are modelling something for wargaming, you are trying to give it a level of durability that you wouldn't necessarily, or you definitely wouldn't need in modelling circumstances where the item is going to be behind a glass screen or in a case. So this gloss varnish on the plaster seals it, and gives it a little bit of protection from cracking during a game. But what it also does as well is it gives a lovely sheen for when we come to paint the sea, which will be very shortly. So once again, we've reached a stage where we're going to have to put everything to one side until it dries. This is a very much a bit process in that you do one thing, leave it to dry, go away, do something else, etc. And I encourage you to leave a big gap of time between things, because if you don't, I rushed when I tried to do the first prototype and bits were falling off and things were running and it just didn't work. So get the tree painted white and the base gloss varnished and leave it to dry, and I shall be back very shortly with the next stage. Okay, so our tree has dried now from the white paint, and so has the gloss varnish on the base. So we are ready for our next stage, and it's time to get the big guns out of the shed and get our clear sealant gun out. Can be a bit messy, this, but that's what makes it more exciting, I think. And what we're going to do is, it's going to be quite difficult for me to do this while filming it, but I shall try it as best I can. We're going to simply cover, you can see my hand shaking because normally I would do this two-handed, cover as much of the tree branch as we can with sealant, and it takes a little bit of time. Goes on in a thin bead, obviously as wide as you've got the nozzle on the applicator, or whatever I decided to call it in the end, I can't remember, and get a nice big amount of stuff on, fill in as many gaps as you can, and I think you get the general idea of what's going on there. So I'll finish this and come back to you in a second. So here we are finished, and just rotate that round now. You can see I've got everything covered on the tree branch. So I'm just going to now take the nail that we talked about earlier on, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tease out the sealant that I've put on, so that it's got tiny little pieces coming off it, and what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to hide as best I can. I'm not trying to hide the actual sprue underneath, because we're going to do a little bit of paint work on it that will do that. But what I am trying to hide is trying to hide the regular or regularish shape of the structure that we've put underneath, so that we get rid of the ends of the sprues if we can with points, as I'm doing there, and that's already looking a lot better. As I'm twisting it around, what I'm looking for, I don't know if you can see on the camera here, is these big areas of clear, because they haven't had, or there isn't a lot of working gone on there. I've just missed that bit. So all I'm doing is I'm doing a mix of sticking the nail in and pulling it out, which is producing little shock waves, or I'm dragging the nail through the sealant to produce an effect. And I think we're pretty much done there. It's quite nice. I like that. Bit of like a silvery Christmas tree effect. So that's ready. This stuff, this sealant takes probably 24 hours plus to dry. So this is all I'm gonna do the 7 I've got, including the big one, and put them all on one side to dry. There's a possibility that you could do this with hot glue, but I think, and I haven't tried it, so please give it a go if you want to. I think hot glue wouldn't be malleable enough for long enough to produce this effect, but I am open to suggestions if it does, and but there we go, that's mine all done, and we'll return tomorrow to start the painting process. Okay, we are back in the modelling area again the following day, and the sealant that we put on our shell splash has more or less dried. It's still a little bit malleable. You can still work it just slightly, but I'm going to start the painting process now. And to do that, I'm going to start on the base. And for the base colour for the base, we're using number 24 navy blue from Miniature Paints. This is an old favourite of mine. I started painting ships 30 years ago or more, and I also painted them professionally for Hallmark figures, which are now figureheads. So the 6,000 ships that you can buy from that company, I used to paint those for them, and they would carry a stock of painted stuff around with them to the shows. So to say I have painted a lot of sea bases is a bit of an understatement. So all I'm doing here is big brush. This is a cheapo brush from Big Tasda's, £2 for about 6 or 7 of them. This is the sort of quality of brush my old mate Sean Clark uses, proper rat hair, and I'm using this because I don't need any detail whatsoever. I'm slapping it on, and what I'm doing is I'm just painting up to the base of the shell splash, and I'm also doing the edge of the base just to make it blend into the table, which it will do nicely. So this sort of stuff, if you look at it now, you can already see that there's a little bit of a bleed through to the plaster underneath, which is fine because we're not trying to get a total coverage, but rather to, if you look at the sea, it changes in colour everywhere it goes. And yes, this might not work for the Mediterranean. It might be the wrong colour for the Pacific, etc. But I've chosen my sea colour, kind of North Sea-ish, without the green. And everything that I make and build is done with this colour because it fits in with my gaming mats. And although I am slightly mad in terms of big projects, I'm not going to have a big project for the Mediterranean and a big project for the North Sea and a big project for the Pacific. The ships go between all three, so I keep my sea colour consistent. So we've given that a coat, and we'll let that dry and come back very shortly. I've gone over and I have done a second coat on the base, and this is the way I like it to look. You can see the little bit of shine on it from the gloss varnish underneath, and it's not completely covered. Can you see how we've got the different dark areas, light areas, etc.? All of that is helping to give what I think is a realistic effect. So we're on our final stage now. We've just got a little bit of dry brushing to do, and the first colour I'm going to dry brush onto the water is Vallejo Dark Blue 70930, if you're going to follow the colours exactly. And just get a little bit out onto my old bit of MDF. No wet palettes here. In fact, a wet palette wouldn't work at all for this because it's called dry brushing for a reason. And wet palettes and dry brushing do not mix. So if you don't know about dry brushing, all I'm doing is getting some paint on the brush, wiping most of it off, so that when I drag it across the surface of the thing that I'm painting, it will pick up the highlights as the brush drags over the top of it. And this is quite a subtle effect, especially with this first colour, but you'll often find that your best effects with dry brushing are with a heavy dry brush of a colour similar to the one that you're dry brushing over. And so there we go. That's the colour as it is, and I'll get one off the shelf that I haven't worked, and there you can see the difference between the two. Quite subtle. It's bringing out a colour similar to where the paint isn't very thick on the other one, but what it's doing is it's accentuating the highlights of our pretend sea surface. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I am going to dry brush all the other ones and come back in a second on your time to do the next colour. So I've dry brushed all the ones that I'm going to dry brush now, and appreciate people come to these tutorials with different levels of painting techniques. So I'm not teaching people to suck eggs, but sometimes people may not have done this technique before. If you do, when you're dry brushing, and inevitably end up with too much paint on your brush, when it's first applied, if you just run your finger or thumb across the bit where you've got way too much paint, and it will come off on your thumb quite nicely. That's one way of doing it. And always make sure, if you can, to have as little paint on your brush as possible to get those subtle effects, because it is really nice. I'm not going to change my brush. I'm going to leave it as it is. And you can see there with brushes, this is an old Pro Art brush of mine that is now relegated to the dry brushing department, and as you can see, it's had a bit of a hard life, bless it. It's probably 3 or 4 years old, this is. So I just use it for dry brushing now, and because the next colour I'm going to use is dark blue grey, 70904. Amazing colour this. I've used it for Corn to Scheme, and I've used it for American Civil War trousers, and I've used it for cloaks for the Garibaldi. So get yourself a bottle of it. So this tends to be quite a gloopy one. This does. That needs a bit of shaking. No, we've got it out. There we go. So I'm not using a lot of paint. Wet palette brigade. That's how you make your paint last longer. You don't use bucketfuls of it when you are putting it out. And because I've not washed my brush, I'm going to get a mix of colours with this, and all that's doing is it's just making the blend, or the way the paints go together, as makes them go together nicer, so there's less of a sheer effect. So once again, here's the one I've just done in my hand against, let's get the focus working again, against that one. So that's dry brush with dark blue, that's dry brush with dark blue with dark pale grey over the top. So once again, I'll finish these all off and come back to you in a second. And we're here on the final stage, and this is the final colour that we're going to use, kind of an off-white ivory colour that I showed you at the start. I've changed my brush to make sure that I've got no blue in it. That's off on the corner drying. Wiped my MDF, and I'm going to use the back side of it, so again I don't get any blue into it. What I'm trying to do with this is I am trying to get as white as possible without being stark white. So, sorry, it weren't on camera there. I just put that little bit of paint there, and just going to use exactly the same technique again. Dry brushing And let's bring one to the fore, and we're just going to dry brush very lightly over the top of the base so that we get our final sea look. I'm going to add some water foam effects that I forgot to mention at the very start. I'm going to add some water foam effects around the base of that. And then we're coming on then to the final bit of the painting process. And I'm just going to move these other ones out of the way because they're picking up the focus a little bit and distracting things. And what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush or drag the brush over the top of our tree that we built earlier on. Doesn't matter if we go down onto the water below, because at the end of the day, that's where the most disturbance in the water will be, on the where the shell is actually entering. And you don't need to take off as much paint as you would for a dry brush on this. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to pick out these little tufts that we put on earlier on with our nail. So we need, obviously these need to be dry, or else we're just going to end up with a mess on our brush and all over the place. And it normally takes a little bit of time just to keep going round. I like to go round this and then look for huge areas of where there isn't any white, because what we're looking for is kind of a mix of see-through and white, but big areas like that one there probably doesn't show up as much on the camera. There we go. Just need a little bit of white just to make them look more realistic. And then finally, just going to go over the tops of these bits where the water is branching off. And I think job's a good one on that. We'll do some photographs with them all, but that's the process. I hope that works for you as well as it's worked for me. This is only the second time that I've done it, and probably with some of these I'm going to stick to where was the one that I didn't like very much. I can't find it now. I'm going to kind of not have as much branching off, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure, but the effect is perfect. It's just the way I'm going to work the branches of the splash that will change, if anything. So I'll finish off this video with just a quick show of the water foam. I've not displayed that, have I? Forgot to mention at the start, AK water foam. For dioramas, this is what I use for the side of the ships, and it's like a gloopy paste. It's like a snow effect, but it's extremely good, and I've been using this for wakes and water on my ships, and kind of this. I'm just working it out from where the shell has entered, and just to get a kind of blend between the sea and the shell splash. And actually that works quite nicely as well, just tipping a few of these, the edges of the shell splash, just to accentuate the ends, because this is a slightly different colour to that we've got underneath. I'm liking that. The foam effect is working on that. You've seen me think of something live there. Oh, I like that. That's really brought that out. So there we go. There is our finished shell splash We'll finish the video off with some views of it in action near some ships that I've painted. If you've got any questions, put them on the video below or on the blog post or whatever where you see the link to this is, and I'll try and help you out. Again, a plea that I made at the start: if you do some shell splashes like this and you're showing them off, please just say, got this from Yorkshire Gamer. I'd be really grateful. I never ask anyone for any money or Patreon, just a little bit of a nod every now and again when somebody uses one of my tutorials. I would be grateful. Thanks a lot. Like and subscribe, please. It's free. And until later, Sithee. I just thought I'd round the video off with a few pictures of the shell splashes in action. And here's a picture of HMS Hood with one of the small shell splashes behind it. I think they work particularly well, photographed as they are with the sky in the background. And we've got another one here with a couple of O-class destroyers. And we use these in our naval war games to mark the ship that is firing at the particular ship that it's firing at, if that makes any sense. I'll do a video on that later on. Another picture of the hood there that you saw at the start. I hope the video proved extremely useful. I think these look extremely good with the models. I think it really sets them off. So thanks again.